Welcome to the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Centre. This is a place of memory and education and lessons for humanity. And in this virtual exhibition highlights tour, we're going to be taking a look at this iconic and award-winning building. The Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Centre aims to raise awareness of the evils of genocide, with a focus on the Holocaust and the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. It serves as a memorial to the victims of genocide and teaches the consequences of prejudice in all its forms, as well as the dangers of indifference, apathy, and silence. In this tour, we're going to take particular note of the architectural features that reflect this vision and mission. The Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Centre, in partnership with the City of Johannesburg, moved into its new buildings in mid-2016. This site, where the Bernberg Museum of Costume stood for 86 years, was bequeathed to the city by the sisters Anne and Teresa Bernberg, on condition that it may only be used as a cultural public space. Extensive workshops with different stakeholders, including Holocaust and Rwandan survivors, assisted in defining the conceptual and symbolic features of the building and exhibition. Louis Levine, award-winning architect and artist, had this to say about working on the project. Open quote, "It's especially exciting to be able to use art as a vehicle for recovering memory. That's the way it should be." Close quote. For Holocaust survivors, the first images that came to mind were that of railway lines, deportations, and cattle trucks. These railway lines are all around the building, but most prominently here in the plaza. And they have a direct connection to this history, as well as the history of other genocides. In both the Nama and Herero and the Armenian genocide, cattle trucks were used as transport. As you can see, the railway lines are reflected in the water below and end in the sky. They are also not parallel, and this represents the chaos and endlessness of genocide. The railway lines, which are embedded in concrete and rock, also allow the visitor to make the connection to the impact of colonial expansion, control, and exploitation on the African continent. They symbolize modernity and progress, but also suffering and oppression. Other journeys may also be brought to mind, journeys of those fleeing human rights atrocities today, for example. The cobblestones on the ground represent the cobbled streets of many European cities and act as a reminder to visitors of a continent that saw itself as cultured and civilized, but was not immune to the acts of genocide and mass atrocities. The large rectangular granite slabs are reminiscent of tombstones and are symbolic of the nameless victims and unmarked graves. They are positioned beside the memorial wall containing the names of children who were murdered in the Holocaust and in the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. Naming of individuals allows the visitor to go beyond the statistics, recognizing that each victim had a name. Images of forests also haunt survivors. The Nazis murdered Jews and others within picturesque European landscapes, and the genocide in Rwanda took place amongst lush, terraced hills. These yellowwood and silver birch trees stand as silent witnesses to death and destruction. In the foyer of the building, the absence of railway lines is symbolic of the void and the emptiness and the loss experienced after genocide. They are also symbolic of scars, both emotional and physical, that remain long after these events. Hard, cold, and abrasive materials have been left exposed to reflect the harsh realities of these histories. The burned red and blackened bricks are laid in English Bond style, used by the British Empire to symbolize strength and beauty. But this brickwork can also be found in the gas chambers of Auschwitz-Birkenau and at the old fort prison complex of Constitutional Hill, right here in Johannesburg. This quote by Auschwitz survivor and writer Primo Levi is prominently displayed in the foyer of the center. "It happened, therefore it can happen again. This is the core of what we have to say. It can happen, and it can happen everywhere." This quote and its central position within the center really speaks to the mission and purpose of the space, to honor the victims of genocide and to teach about the dangers of prejudice and hate speech in all its forms, so as to prevent the recurrence of such mass atrocities and genocide in the future. Large windows have been included throughout the building, but quite deliberately here in this permanent exhibition space. This serves to remind visitors that genocides do not take place in the dark or in secret. They happen during the day and often in full view of the world. Being able to see and hear outside the center encourages visitors to question what is happening in the world today and in their own communities, and to think about what can be done. The journey into these stories of man-made catastrophes ends here in this evergreen space, a garden dedicated to children surrounded by living plants and poetry. There is a quote on the wall of the space by an unknown Holocaust survivor, which is displayed in English, Kinyarwanda, and Hebrew, and reads, "I have told you the story, not to weaken you, but to strengthen you. Now it is up to you." Once again, visitors are encouraged to make the connection between the past and the present as they consider how they bear witness to injustices in their own communities every day. They are welcome to sit in this garden of reflection and renew their sense of hope as well as their commitment to action. They can listen to moving music. Remember Zakor, Ibuka, compiled by renowned South African composer Philip Miller, and featuring voices and songs by survivors of the Holocaust and the genocide in Rwanda. And so we invite you all to visit the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center to explore these and many other stories that are held within this iconic building.
Der Morgen war gülden uns dem Heim.